This is Into the Hen House, a podcast for moms with littles. In this space, we share the stories, experiences, and wild wisdom of mothers. We remember and celebrate the sacred. We are your hosts, Andrea and
Caitlin.
Get ready for some inspiration because it's time to jump into the hen house.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We're so excited that you're here today. And this episode, we have former podcast co-founder and co-host Chantal, and she's here to talk to us about her journey as a mom of a daughter with leukemia.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So before we dive into this story, I kind of just want to say a couple of things because I feel like we all have stories to share, and sharing our stories is very healing, and it's very helps build community. And there's a wonderful in story sharing and storytelling. There's so much goodness there. And I think sometimes also what happens is when stories are heavy, when they're scary, when another mom is living your worst nightmare, like the ones you hope never happen to you, it's very easy to want to turn away or pass blame and say, she must have done something wrong. If I do everything right, it can never happen to me. And I would like to encourage us all to take a breath because there could be some triggering things that come up. It's not an easy journey that Chantal has been on in the last year. So I just want us to lean in and to lean into compassion and to remember that because none of us really know what life can throw at us. And so I just want to encourage us all to lean in instead of looking away. So, but with that, if we go back to, November, December 2024, can you start there and kind of tell us
Yes.
how this began?
Yes. So, it was actually right before Thanksgiving. So my kids have been off school for the week and my parents were planning to come down for Thanksgiving. And we all were a little under the weather. So both my kids had fevers and, some sort of viral illness, I assumed. But I had called the pediatrician and they were closed or they didn't have any appointments. So they recommended that I go to like the drive-through. There's like a little drive-through. It's called SmartMed where they can see your kids. They'll do like the swabs, see what kind of virus they have. So I went there and I had noticed she had like little red spots in her mouth, which I later found out was a symptom. But I thought she had strep throat. So they did the viral swab and it was funny because everything came back negative. Strep, flu, like nobody had anything that they could determine. And then, my son started to get better. This was on Monday, but every day my daughter was not getting better. She was extremely tired, very lethargic, and she like wanted me to carry her up and down the stairs. And I was like, man, this is like really.
And how old is she at this point?
So she had just turned 5.
Okay.
Yeah, so she turned 5 October 20th. So she was like a month into being 5. And so I, we had Thanksgiving and she didn't want to eat Thanksgiving dinner. And she was just like lying down, just so lethargic. And she had like 103 fever. And then I remember, we were all kind of wondering, what was going on and thinking maybe this is just a prolonged flu or something. But Black Friday came, a fever still. So I called the pediatrician, but they were closed for Thanksgiving. So Saturday morning, she woke up and she still had a fever. And I was just like, this is just not normal. Like she is so tired. So I took her to the urgent care Children's Healthcare. I went online, I found the one with like the shortest wait time. And then, so we drove to Showa Urgent Care. And so they were kind of like, well, we don't know. Like, she was coming back negative for all the viral things. So she was like, the most I could do is draw blood and do a chest x-ray. And she's like, but otherwise it could just be a virus. And I was like, no, absolutely draw blood. Like, I was like, something is wrong. Like, this is like, I know my daughter, something's very wrong. So they drew blood, which was very traumatic because she had never had blood drawn. So we had to hold her down. They come back and they're like, oh, the levels were so off that like it was a bad draw. So we have to draw it again because like her levels were just so distorted that like clearly we made a mistake. So they have to hold her down again and it comes back again that off. And so the doctor comes in and she's just like, you know, her levels are like very off. Her chest x-ray, her thymus was enlarged. And she said, you know, something is not right. She's like, I'm not sure, but I just need you to go to Arthur M. Blank Hospital emergency room, like go directly there. And I was like, do I have time to like stop and get something to eat? She was like, no. She was like, go straight to the emergency room. So I started to panic, of course. And I'm just like, oh my God, like what could be happening? At this point, I'm still thinking like maybe it's mono, because that was one of the things she said. She was like, it could be mono, because sometimes mono shows like very elevated white blood cells, but her platelets were so low. She was like at a 7. So she was at a very high risk of bleeding, like internal bleeding and things like that. So yeah, so we got to the emergency room and, you know, eventually the doctor looked like, leaving, like you're not leaving, like something's wrong with her. And I just remember I just started bawling because I was like, oh my God, like we have to stay here. And then I started Googling things and I came to the conclusion that she had leukemia, even though they told me not to Google anything. So I came to terms with it in my mind, but everyone else didn't. So when the doctor finally came in and he said, you know, this is like an oncology issue. And so they were sending us to the AFLAC, like the cancer and blood disorder clinic to get admitted there. And at that point, I knew she had leukemia, but everyone else was in shock. Like my dad and her dad, they were like bawling, but I had already cried and then come to that conclusion. So I was more just like, I guess you could say like panic mode, like, okay, what's next? Like, yeah, but absolutely devastated. Like I remember the nurse looking at me and I'm just like bawling. This was when they said, you're not leaving. And she said, you know, she was talking to Chantal. She's like, you know, your mommy's really strong, like trying to hint for me to like compose myself, but I could not. I was like, I could not compose myself. It was really hard. Yeah.
So,
and then we got admitted. Yeah.
Sorry, as I'm tearing up, it's just,
Yeah,
it is.
it is.
You said it at the start, like it's every mom's worst nightmare, right?
It really is. Yeah.
So they sent you to, I think you said the name AFLAC?
Yeah, so it's called
AFLAC.
AFLAC Cancer and Blood Disorders Clinic, and I didn't understand that. AFLAC, I guess, is just the
So
insurance
AFLAC
company.
is an insurance company. They will have
That's what I thought.
sponsored. They will
They
be the
sponsored
sponsor of the cancer unit at the Children's Hospital in Atlanta.
Yeah, and it took me like
Yeah.
months to figure that out. Yeah,
And
now I know.
This is now like, you now have to drive to another facility, or this is at this hospital that you had come to with the emergency center?
Yeah, that was connected. It was a brand new hospital. They had just opened in September, and I remember they like wheeled us up, and it was nighttime. By that time, it was like 10 p.m. So it was the same hospital. We went right from the emergency room to our room.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And at what point in all of this did somebody, a doctor, actually say the words leukemia to you? Like you had done your Google, you'd done your deep dive, you decided intuitively through what you'd read, this is what it is, I know. But when did they tell you?
So the ER doctor just said this is an oncology or oncology issue. I can't remember exactly how he said it, but so I was like thinking, okay, cancer, like, and so I was thinking leukemia, but it wasn't. So once we got up to our room and I see like cancer and blood disorders, I'm like, okay, like they're admitting us here. And the nurses were so nice. And then I guess whoever was on call that night, the doctor came in and she was great. Like she sat me down and she explained everything, how they were seeing blasts on her blood cells. And she said, this is usually indicative of leukemia, but we have to send it for further testing. And she's like, there's two types. She said it could be B cell leukemia, which is very treatable, or it could be T cell, which is a lot harder to treat and like has a much lower remission rate. So I was just praying for it. She said, if it's B cell, she said, that's good news. Like we can treat it. And there's like a 95% remission rate. But she said, if it's T cell, then it's a lot harder. I think it goes down to like, I don't want to say, but it's not even close to 95%. So at that point, I'm just praying that it's T cell, but I'm also in denial and I don't believe them. I still think it's mono. Like, I'm just like, so yeah, that's how that went. It wasn't until the next day, you know, they do their rounds and there was like a whole team of doctors. And I was like, well, how do you know? And they were saying the blasts. And I was like, but how do you know that's leukemia? And so they had to explain it to me and show me the slides, like the blood slides. And at that point, I believed them. But for the first night, I did not believe them. I was like, oh, they're lying. Like they're just trying to like scam. Like I don't know what I was just did not believe them. Like total denial. So yeah.
Yeah. So kind of in that early, she ended up having transfusions. Did she not? Like in those first,
Yeah.
in that first admittance?
She needed an immediate platelet transfusion before, like, even if they didn't know what it was, her platelets were so low that she needed that. So she started getting platelets and blood transfusions that night. And they also started giving her allopurinol, which is a medication to prevent tumor something syndrome, where the tumor or blood, there's a risk when you start treating leukemia or when your platelets are that low of like something happening to, it's called tumor synthesis syndrome or tumor something syndrome, TLS, I think. And so they had to start giving her this medication like every couple hours. They started giving her dexamethasone right away. And it was very overwhelming to have your child like be offered all these medications. And I'm like frantically trying to Google them. I think they even gave her an IV chemo. Like they were like right away. Like I probably had to sign the treatment plan, but there was some things that they started doing because it was literally just like that imminent, like life or death. I had to sign off on it, of course, but yeah, it was very overwhelming because I was just like my healthy child who I like, you know, I never use a microwave. I felt like I did all the things. I tried so hard. I did everything. And it was just like my worst nightmare. It was like, how could this be happening? You know, it was just horrible for me. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it kind of went from 0 to 100, 0 to 1,000.
Yeah.
Like really, really fast.
Yeah. And I mean, even, you know, that was Saturday night and it was like, okay, Monday morning, she's going in for surgery. We have to put a port in her. And I didn't know what a port was. So I'm like, you're installing something in my child? Like I was horrified. And now I know that a port is something that people who have cancer, adults and children, it's installed under their chest to give chemo and to take blood more easily. So it's something I just didn't know because I've never been close with someone who had cancer.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, wow. They had told you in that first kind of night, it could be B cell, it could be T cell.
Yeah.
At what point did you get told which one it is?
It was definitely within the first couple days. Yeah, like I think by Wednesday I knew, because I remember a friend had texted me, and I remember texting my friend and saying, "Oh, thank goodness it's B cell." So it was definitely by Wednesday. And I
Right.
was so relieved. Also horrified because like
Yeah. Like you've just
yeah,
received like the worst news ever, but somehow the glimmer of hope within the worst news is that it's the
yeah.
or the more treatable.
Yeah, and it was interesting because, when I had to sign off on the treatment plan, I was going through with the doctor on all the side effects and the risks of the treatment. And he had told me some things that really scared me in terms of like her immune system becoming extremely suppressed from the chemo. And then at that point, the high risk being an infection from bacteria that's already in her body, because her immune system's just so suppressed that her body would not be able to fight off like normal bacteria that's in your colon or your digestive system, and she could turn septic. And basically told me that that's how a lot of patients don't make it. And so once he told me that, I was absolutely terrified. I no longer became afraid of the leukemia. I was terrified that she was going to die during treatment.
Right.
The treatment side effect, even though that doctor looked at me, because I was just like, can we not do that part? Like, I was so scared. And that was this summer. And he was like, no, it's a very important part of treatment. But he said, we know how to fix everything. And that honestly gave me so much, like, I felt so safe when he said that. Like, he was like, don't worry, we know how to fix everything. And like, I will say they have been really great, Showa. And I know, nobody wants to have to give their child chemotherapy because it's so toxic. And, a lot of people, if they were to get cancer, might do a natural route or things like that. And it's
Can
not
we
really
talk about that though? Because it's
Mm.
different when it's a child, right?
Right.
Like
So
the rules are different. Like you don't
you don't
have
really
as
have a
many
choice.
options
Yeah.
to, you can't, like without risking a major child protective services investigation, you can't really just say, oh, I'm not doing chemo, I'm going a natural route. You don't really get that option. And then
You
it's
don't get
also,
that.
go ahead, sorry.
Oh no, yeah, I was gonna say like you don't get that option because there is. I mean, for me personally, I didn't consider not doing it, even though I didn't want to. But there is something where it's called medical kidnapping. I mean, they'll just take custody of your child and do it anyways. Because basically, if you refuse chemo, they assume you're putting your child's life at risk. So, but how sick she was when she got diagnosed, I would not have felt safe with her not being there at all. Like needing blood transfusions, like just how much they knew and how little I knew. It was like I wouldn't have trusted, like I did trust them, And I think that's really important, because if I didn't, I think it would have, and maybe that was a coping mechanism. I don't know, but it would have been really hard to go through that, having not trusted them,
Yeah.
I could imagine that there are like so many variables when it comes to something like this. And like you said, like you went from like trying to go see your pediatrician to rush to urgent care to rush to emergency and admittance, in a handful of hours. I think
Yeah.
that makes your decision process a lot different than if something were I don't like the word caught, but if something were,
Right.
if you had got a diagnosis
With a phone
earlier,
call.
where
Yeah.
things weren't already in such an eminent stage, sure, maybe you would have made some different decisions. Who knows? You can't speak to that. All you can speak to
Right.
is that in the situation where your child was in a life or death situation, you had to choose to act immediately, and that's what modern medicine is there for, right? That's what it's
Right.
there for.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, you pray that, like you said, that you have a team that you trust, who instill confidence in you and who give you hope and can help you have that faith that is probably so incredibly hard to have, that everything's going to be okay, and you go with what they say.
Yeah, exactly. And I read a lot of things that scared me that I probably, if I could go back, wish I never read. Like other people's experiences. I mean, because there was a lot of times the doctor, once she got more further into treatment, we were assigned one specific doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And she was always so confident and felt like Chanel was fine. And I had all these worst case scenarios that I had read in my mind, and I would constantly bring them to her. And she would say that, we rarely see that. I was just so afraid. So I will say, like, this whole thing brought out probably the worst version of me in terms of my coping. And, I've always okay, but at the same time, I
Chantal,
didn't.
sorry, we lost you for a second. You
Okay.
said it brought out the worst part of you coping wise, and then you kind of cut out.
Yeah.
Sorry about
Yeah,
that.
like it brought out the worst part of me coping wise, where it's like, it was a weird paradox because on one hand, I really felt confident that she was going to be okay. And I felt like, but on the other hand, I was constantly scan danger. So it's like, it's hard to, and not just like with a treatment, like it became about everything, it like really impacted my mental health as a parent, as a whole. Yeah.
Can you take us through a little bit, like, so this all happened, you are not from the Atlanta area, so you don't necessarily have, all of the family, friends, maybe support system that someone in, let's say, like their hometown might have going through something like this. Your parents were down visiting for Thanksgiving. You get this diagnosis. What does that process then start to look like for, I guess, the last year? And you also have another child.
Yeah. It's been really difficult. Thankfully, my parents ended up staying for almost 2 months.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and that was really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And then they kind of planned to come down and stay with me anytime we knew she was going to be in a more intense phase of her treatment. So if it wasn't for my parents, it would have been extremely hard. And there was some times where I brought my son with me. There are some times where we ended up at the emergency room and I had to bring him, and we all stayed overnight. I think that happened a couple times, and that was pretty difficult because that one time in particular, I forgot to pack. So like the ER nurse like brought me like an emergency pack of like pants, and I was on my period, so she brought me like a pad. I just waited to the next day to like order stuff from Target. So the hospital is really great. You can order things and all that, but yeah, it was definitely hard. Yeah, it was hard on my mental health for sure.
Yeah. It's kind of this whole, like the whole process. Now, I think when you kind of got the diagnosis and all of that, I did you have any idea what the whole process was actually going to look like, or did it just kind of like,
I had
because it's
no,
been really long, like it's
yeah.
extremely intensive.
So they told me right away, they said it's going to be hard. Like, I remember the doctor saying, this is going to be hard. Like, she said, it's going to be 9 months of intense treatment, which actually ended up being 11 months. And I'll tell you why in a second. And then she said, then it will be maintenance and it will be a lot easier. And they said, her hair will fall out. I had to go to a class at the hospital for like all the things I would have to follow, all the risks, all the procedures, but, so after her first month of treatment, the goal was for her to be MRD negative. So minimal residual disease. They didn't want to see like any residual leukemia cells. And if they did, that would have been an indication that it was a more resistant leukemia. So she was MRD negative, I was so happy. And we found out on New Year's Eve last year. But because there was still like 0.000 point something, they wanted most people to get, it's a new immunotherapy drug. It was called Blina. So she, it added 2 months to her treatment. So it ended up being 11 months.
And that was just for the intensive portion.
Yes.
You're still going through the maintenance.
Yeah.
And is there a timeline on that? Like, how long does she do the maintenance treatment for?
It will be till February 2027. So I think it's 17 months. So total, it's about 2.5 years.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal then being that, the cancer's all gone, she's in remission, and she can live a normal life? Or is there more after that again?
I think that there's something called I think it's called survivorship clinic. So like will be followed up probably closely. But I think after 5 years, they consider her completely in remission and they don't expect it to come back. The reason the treatment so long is because I think initially when they would have a lot of success with the treatment, it would come back. So they extended it. So now they're, I guess, have a lot more success with that. And the immunotherapy that she got also increased the remission from like 95 to like 98%. So
the prognosis is really good.
Yes. And that's the thing, I always think, like, I've always felt sure of her prognosis. So it's like, it's been harder and not in the way that you would think. Like when you hear like, oh my gosh, my child has cancer, like you think, oh my goodness, my child's not going to survive. But it wasn't that. It was more hard in ways that you wouldn't expect. In terms of, I had no idea how difficult the treatment would be and how long it would be and how much it would take out of me. And, even when she was first diagnosed, I know I've told Andrea this, like I went into her being diagnosed with like my cup full because like I hadn't been living this. And every month it was less and less and less. So every time something would happen, it's like I'm operating with like, because I was like, why is this getting so much harder? Like I remember feeling like my life in January, say last year, like I felt like I coped a lot better. And it's like over time of the treatment, it's like worn me down a lot, So
right, but there's elements of like the chronic stress, right? Of like if there's a weird rash that shows up, if there's a weird cough that shows up, if and you've had several times where she's had to have like is it like like a backpack, but it's like the treatment is at home.
And
that so was it's like 20, it's like all the time sometimes, right? Like a whole month or something.
Yeah, she had 2 months of 24-hour, 30-day infusions. That was the immunotherapy. And I think that's what really set my nervous system over the edge. Like, because the machine was always alarming and you had a specific time limit, and it was connected to her port. So it was very complicated and you had to make sure the dressing was fine. It was like being a nurse 24/7. And, there was weeks we were at the emergency room like 5 times, and that was like common, so it took a lot for my nervous system, and it made me extremely on edge, like very much in fight or flight constantly.
Very, very high alert.
Very high alert. And it's like coming down from that. And it kind of coincided. I read that, when something like this happens, around 6 to 8 months, people reach compassion burnout, I guess it's called, which makes sense. Like if you're, in that high of like a heavy duty, vigilant caretaking role, like around 6 to 8 months, you kind of crash. And I did experience that, because I remember, I think I was Googling things like, why is this getting harder? And that's when I learned about like 6 to 8 months of compassion burnout. And that's when it kind of it gets really hard for people.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit too? Because I think it's hard to comprehend, right? So during the more heavy treatment, were you at the hospital for clinic appointments every week? And that was just
every week for the full 9 months, for sure, every week. Some blocks of the treatment, she was sedated every week, and some it was just IV chemo. But while she was on the Blina, the at-home infusion, it was twice a week. So we were at clinic twice a week. And then on top of that, several times at the emergency room. Because if they were closed, I could not, there were certain things I could not fix. And it's such a finicky little thing. She's 5 years old. So like she stepped on the cord once, and it like, there's just so many things that could happen. And I think that, I don't know if they've done studies because it's such a new medication, but I really think that they need to do studies, and they need to have more supports for parents with that medication, because I saw other moms at the hospital and I could just tell like, wow. And even for Chantal, it's like it really made it harder for her. And I think yes, it helps the treatment significantly, but I think mental health wise for everyone, it's very, very hard. So I don't know what the solution is, but yeah.
Chantal, we've been talking more about your experience through all of this. Can you share for parents who have absolutely no clue, which is probably most, what's it like to parent a child going through this?
It's very hard. Sorry, now I'm gonna cry. That's probably the hardest part.
Yeah.
I saw a video of Chanel talking about you. And it was the sweetest video of her talking about how brave her mom is, and how, her mom is so brave, and her mom is so beautiful, and her mom is always with her, and her mom always shows up for her.
Yeah,
And
that was
Simi
so
and I
sweet.
were both at home, and we're like, oh my God.
No, that
like
made me
having
cry
some
too.
idea of what this child has been through and what you have been through.
I know. And it's like, it's so hard, because it's like, it just feels like it's not fair. And I think that's why I get so mad, because it's like, she's just such an innocent girl, and it breaks my heart that she has to go through this. And she's so strong, and I know she's going to be okay. And I really feel that, she might, I don't think she sees it now, but I feel it will add, I know it sounds crazy, but I feel it will add to her life in some ways, in terms of her strength and her resilience. But it's not easy to watch, and it breaks. I think I actually was heartbroken this summer because I was having heart pain. Like, I think this whole situation really, I bet if I went to the doctor, how there's like that syndrome, like broken heart syndrome, where it's an actual thing. I actually think I had that, because it was just so hard to watch her. And it's like, you just want to make her happy. So I've definitely tried to counteract everything that she's been through, maybe to the point of spoiling her, but it's really hard not to when you see your child go through things that are just horrifying. And it's made me really angry, to be honest. I get very angry because of what she's had to go through. And, you know, I get angry if anyone says anything about her, because it's like, you know, say her teacher makes a remark or this, like I'm very overly protective. So yeah, because it's like, oh, I've seen what she's been through and other people haven't. So it just makes me, I get riled up about it. But I just think it's, yeah, it's really sad, honestly.
And I think it's hard to fathom, right? Like you mentioned, like having to be held down for those first 2 blood draws, but
Yeah.
that was only just the beginning. Like it's like that was the easy stuff.
Yeah.
She's had numerous spinal taps. Yes, I think so.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. I think she's had 18 now. And every week she has to get her port accessed. And, you know, some kids, it gets easier with time. She just happens to be one of them that it doesn't. It's gotten worse. And, you know, just hearing her say, like, you know, why did this happen to me? Why did I get leukemia? Hard.
You know,
It's like big questions. Yeah.
You touch on parts of what she's been through, and obviously we can see through the emotion conveyed on your face, like how incredibly hard it is. And then you say something like, I feel like I spoil her sometimes, and my insides go, I don't think that word exists. I don't think that it's possible to spoil someone who's been through so much. Like, you want it? Here it is. Let me bring
Yeah.
your life. That one really hit for me. Like, or like you said, teachers noticing this or that. Like, you have no idea what this child has been through every single day, and she's so young still. It's not, and I'm not discounting how hard it would be for an older child also, but with age comes some different understanding abilities and different cognitive levels, and you don't have that with a 5-year-old. You don't. So I guess where I'm going with that is, what has support looked like for your family? Where do you guys find support? I mean, I have to imagine there are support groups, but is that something you guys have taken part in, or has been helpful or not helpful, or what does that look like?
I have not. I've actually found support groups like that to be very triggering, because it's very hard to be around. It's a hard topic.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard for me to be around other families who are experiencing the same thing, which sounds silly. It shouldn't be, but it's maybe something in the future. But Andrea has been awesome support, actually. She's always there to listen to me when I'm like sometimes just venting off the rails. And poor Andrea's probably like, what's going on with Chantal today? But
no, I never think that.
She's only ever said she's grateful that she can be there for you every day.
Yeah.
You do talk to her almost every day, because she knows how important it is for you to have someone you can talk to. So,
and if anything, I'm amazed that you still have compassion for me, when every once in a while I was like, okay, so I'll give you an example. Okay, I think actually I mentioned this in the podcast once before. I couldn't tell you when, but but okay, I went to the hairdresser. And the lady was mean. Like, she walloped my head with the brush so that I was bruised. She burned me with the blow dryer. And she told me that I was neglectful of myself. And
I remember this.
And I wasn't pretty. And I left, and I was crying because I was
rude.
at this like really rude, ridiculous hairdresser, and I was like, lady, like, you have absolutely no idea And so so I told Chantal, and I was like, okay, like, I'm like, I know how ridiculous I sound, that I'm upset over like this stupid little thing that is like really not a big deal. And I was like, it would be totally okay if Chantal is like, lady, you don't have any idea what hard is. Like, get over yourself.
Zip.
Right? And and I think I might have even said that. I'm like, I totally get it. Like, this is just I do recognize like the absurdity of what I'm saying. And now I'm just crying and laughing, but
I feel like that means that we've had a great episode. If
right?
if we have gone through this extremely heavy topic with you, Chantal, and somehow towards the end we're laughing.
But the
Do
funny
And
thing,
right? But she was kind to me. She was like, what a mean lady. Like, that's really ridiculous. Like, you go
yeah.
to the hairdresser, and even if they're lying through their teeth, they're supposed to say, look how wonderful you are.
I mean, they're certainly not supposed to leave you bruised or burned.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, anyways.
But the funny thing is that like I feel like for myself, like I've always felt like, okay, I'm still able to understand everyone's struggles. Like even because I remember when my kids had the flu or had a cold, like it felt almost close to as serious as I feel now sometimes. So it's like everything's valid. Everyone's feelings are valid, and appreciate people who treat me normal. So, because sometimes some people don't, but the times that I've been able to be like, oh, maybe I've had a moment where I forget what's going on, or, there's like happiness. It's where, my friends, Asja or you like treat me normal. So it's nice because sometimes people are just so scared. I myself am one of those people. I, have had family members with children with cancer. So like, I never knew what to say. It's very hard. It's a very hard topic. So, and I understand that. So.
And I think too, also, there's been times where on a particularly hard day or where things aren't going as planned, and there's I don't know what some might term a breakdown or something like that. Like, I think you've said you had one, and one of the moms at your daughter's school just sat with you and was so kind and wasn't judgmental, and like helped you out at this event and was like, hi, welcome here, Chantal will be with you in a minute. Go do your thing.
Was that at Rashid's birthday or what was that?
I think it was someone's birthday in
'Cause I'm like,
fall.
my mind. I
It
think
was the mom who's a therapist, I think.
Oh.
Anyways.
She
okay.
gets it. She's got training in this.
Right. I'm trying to remember. I'm like, oh my God, my memory. Yeah.
But I think that's too, like, sometimes to have compassion and go, like, if something gets forgotten or a text doesn't get responded, like, it's not personal. It's someone who's like so far past their capacity to
Right.
deal with life that you kind of look at them and go, like, how are you still standing? How are you still walking? How are you even remotely still functioning?
Yeah.
And it's really been like a full-time job
Yeah. And
to
that's
manage this.
Yeah, it really has. Like, I don't know how people, thankfully I was able to do it full time, but I know sometimes it can like really devastate families. One hospital stay and people can like lose their job or lose their house. I've heard of, that happening. So it's really, yeah, it's a lot.
Chantal, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing your story. I feel like you're very inspiring, and you've been so strong, and your daughter has been like, oh my God, just like amazing. Yeah, we have so much love for you, for all three of you, your son as well. And because I know it's been hard for him too.
Yeah.
And thank you for coming on here and sharing
Mhm.
a little bit about the year that your life got turned upside down and inside out and torn apart and
Yeah.
scattered across a continent to some
Literally.
degree.
Yeah.
So yeah. Is there anything else anyone else wants to say before we wrap up?
No, just thank you so much for having me and letting me share. Yeah, it was emotional, but it was nice to talk about it. So
It's been a real pleasure to be here, to be able to hold space and to listen to your story. And I can only imagine that for those listening who maybe are going through something similar, that it'll be a nice reminder that there is hope. And for those who've never been through something like this, to remember that for those around you who might be, that they want to feel normal still too. And they want those messages, and they want to be held. And so thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. To all our listeners today, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for leaning in, and thank you for taking in this episode, even though it is a heavier subject, and it may have been harder to sit and to listen to, but we're so grateful that you're all here, and we can't wait to be with you again soon.
Yes, thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. If you are loving this podcast, please go ahead and subscribe and leave us a review. Both of these really help the show. As you go out into the world this week, know that we are sending you so much love and wishing you a wonderful and beautiful day. And we will see you back here soon.